Hello, welcome to the Nutmeg from the Evening Standard, where we get together and talk about the Premier League football in London from the past weekend and the matches we've been to. I'm Dan Kilpatrick. I'm joined by Simon Collins, Jack Rosser and James Robson. We're going to start this week with a chat about managers, specifically Jose Mourinho, David Moyes and Michail Arteta. I think there's an interesting comparison to be made between all three, really. They were all appointed at similar times in the middle of last season. Mourinho in mid-November at Spurs. I think Moyes on December 30th at West Ham and Arteta 5 or 10 days before that at Arsenal. So they've all been in the jobs a similar amount of time. Mourinho is in a cup final, which was what he was appointed at Spurs to do, but his side are languishing in mid-table after yesterday's defeat to West Ham. Arteta's already won a cup final, but they're even further back in the table than Spurs. While Moyes saved West Ham from relegation, of course, and has now got them challenging for the Champions League. They're just 1 point, I think, off second place, which is quite remarkable after 25 odd games. So just opening this up to the floor, really. Who do we think has done the best job so far of those three? I admit it's a crude comparison, but at the moment, whose supporters should be the happiest with their manager?
I think West Ham will certainly be the happiest right now. I think when you look at it in terms of the job done, Moyes has sort of kept them up and laid down a very clear plan. You can't negate what Arteta's done in winning that FA Cup. Arsenal enjoyed a fantastic end to last season. It's been a bit hit and miss this year, but you can sort of see there's something coming together. He's done really good work with a lot of the kids there. Saka's become incredible. Emil Smith-Rowe as well, starting to shine. But I think West Ham fans, the top club in London for the first time in a very long time, or perhaps at the end of a Premier League weekend, it might be the first time ever they're the top club in London, certainly at this stage of the season. And they seem confident, which is something you can rarely say for West Ham. So I think Moyes is fairly safe in that comparison at the moment.
Yeah, without doubt, it's Moyes, but I think it's also about expectations. It didn't take Moyes doing a lot for him to be considered a success, given what he took over. So you've got to put these things into context, and in that sense, I would think that Mourinho in particular has been a real disappointment, and Arteta as well. Like Jack said, at least Arteta's won a trophy, and Mourinho, of course, was brought in to kind of just get the last bit out of this squad that Pochettino built, I suppose, wasn't it? You had the wonderful football under Pochettino, but didn't win anything. And it was like, well, let's get in the ultimate winner and we'll maybe, cast aside some of our concerns if he gets us a trophy. And he might still do that. But I just think you look at Spurs and you think, is it going to get better? And I don't think it will. They could win the League Cup. I don't think they will against Arsenal. Against City, it'll take a lot, but I don't think they will. They could win the Europa League again. I don't think they will. But even if they won those two things, would Spurs fans look to next season with optimism, excitement? You'd be in the Champions League if they won the Europa League. But the way that team plays and the way they're going, you don't see them on an upward trajectory here. You just think this is going to get worse, if anything.
Dan, just if Mourinho had done what Arteta has done in terms of winning the FA Cup and now being 10th in the league, do you think Spurs fans would be satisfied? He'd be under less pressure. Would that be enough to appease them winning the FA Cup, or is it more about the football itself than necessarily the result?
That's a good question. I do think with Mourinho, whoever appoints him, when you appoint him, you make this kind of mental trade-off, right, where you say the football's not going to be great, it's not going to be particularly entertaining, but it's all going to be results-driven and it's all about getting over the line in competition. So I think if Mourinho had done what Arteta did last year, and which actually, thinking about it, wouldn't have been inconceivable because Spurs actually went out of the FA Cup to Norwich. So, it wasn't like they had a really, really tough run there. So, had he done that, I think he would have a lot of credit in the bank and the feeling would be quite different. And, Spurs fans would just be kind of embracing the fact that they're a cup side. I think the big difference for me between those two is the fact that Arteta feels like a project manager. It feels like Arsenal are giving him patience because he's building something there and he's working towards something, and he's got this experience under De Guardiola, and he's slowly kind of he's slowly kind of getting his methods across, and Arsenal are very gradually taking steps forward, even if they're occasionally taking a step back. I think with Mourinho, there's never a sense with Mourinho that he's building something long term. It's all about the here and now, and it all feels very results dependent. And when you take away the results, which have obviously completely gone at the moment, yesterday was the fifth defeat in 6 league games. When you take them away, there's really nothing left for Mourinho. That there's just this kind of fairly stale football, this reliance on individuals without the winning.
I'll tell you something. If Mourinho had done what Arteta had done last season, we'd certainly be hearing a lot more about it. If he'd have been first Spurs manager in however long to win a trophy, you'd be hearing about it. And I think if he wins the League Cup this year, I think we'll be hearing a lot about it. And it's almost like you kind of feel more and more with Mourinho that he's telling you to forget what you're seeing in front of your eyes, because look at this instead. And yes, it might be a trophy, but you cannot deny that. I would imagine as a Spurs fan, I'm not a Spurs fan, but as a Spurs fan, the feeling of watching Jose Mourinho, the feeling you have compared to what you had for those years under Pochettino, just doesn't even come close. Now, I'm a big advocate of, put your trophies on the table. That is important. But I don't know, increasingly with Mourinho, that feels like more and more of a trade-off than it's ever been in the past.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the positives now, Jack, with Moyes. How has he kind of initiated this turnaround in I suppose, a relatively short space of time? When he took over West Ham, they were 1 point above the relegation zone. His mandate was keeping them in the Premier League. Now he's got them challenging for Europe, which is, what I guess Arteta and Mourinho would have been expected to do this season.
He didn't have much time to do it, but he had his first spell where he had a plan of what he wanted to do if he'd stay on. And I don't think that plan has changed too much between the time he wasn't there when Manuel Pellegrini took charge and was supposedly, more high caliber and was going to bring them this sort of success. He wants a specific profile of what a West Ham signing looks like. And you can see that in Soufal, in Thomas Souček, especially the two Czech lads. They work really hard. They've got something to prove to the Premier League because they've never played here before. So he just sort of, once he'd got them safe last season, which was, no mean feat, it was a tougher situation he was facing than the first time he did it at West Ham. He started setting this plan in motion and started clearing out some of the expensive and very underwhelming signings that have been made by Manuel Pellegrini and Mario Cios. And there have just been small results here and there that have convinced the squad and those around him that he's doing the right thing. And it's built this sort of, mentality of hard work, but everyone's seeing it pay off and they don't feel like they're sacrificing things. There's still a bit of attacking flair there, especially in Jesse Lingard now. And everyone seems to be enjoying it. He's created a good place for people to go. There are supposedly no cliques anymore at the West Ham training ground, which there have been in the past. And it seems like everyone's enjoying working under him, and he's certainly enjoying it again. I think there was a quote from someone close to him a few months ago that he's got his mojo back, and he's starting to feel like that.
Yeah, watching West Ham beat Spurs yesterday, and I have to say Spurs played relatively well, considering some of the performances over the last month. But watching West Ham, you did get a sense that he's really built a side that's just greater than the sum of its parts. They know their limitations, they know their strengths, they know their weaknesses. They've got a clearly defined style, and they're all obviously pulling in the right direction and enjoying themselves as well. And you could see that from the celebration, the kind of band celebration that's been memed by Declan Rice today. And I think there was a quote from Craig Dawson afterwards saying they were dancing in the dressing room at the win. So it really is a positive feeling around West Ham at the moment, which is more than can be said for Spurs. I think the fan base kind of firmly split at the moment on Mourinho. Some blaming the players, others feeling that he's just not improving the squad. Simon, you mentioned before we started recording that the Arsenal fans are really angry, which I suppose is understandable, but surprised me a little bit, particularly in the context of a fairly encouraging performance, I suppose, against an incredible Man City side. I mean, what's the mood specifically towards Arteta?
I think that the frustration for Arsenal fans is possibly partly because of the FA Cup success and the way last season finished. You win the FA Cup, you get your captain to sign a long-term deal, you sign Thomas Partey for 50 million euros. I think you're right to have your expectations much higher than than being 10th in the league after 25 games now. So I think that's where the frustration is, because also they'll look at West Ham in 4th place and think, with all due respect to West Ham, if you'd said, we'd be this far in the season, they'd be 4th and Arsenal 10th, Arsenal fans would have been fuming. So I think it's the situation they're in that's frustrating. I think particularly among fans, there is a sense this week that this is a defining week for Arsenal's season, because if they go out of the Europa League, they've essentially got nothing really to play for anymore, because the top 4 looks gone now. You could say they'd be fighting for Europa League finish, but that's not really where they want. So I think while fans can see the green shoots under Arteta, I think it's very difficult for them to look past where they are in the league table and just how bad that run was in November, December, where, they really derailed any hopes they had of finishing high up the table.
Simon, can you put your finger, I mean, you watch them every week. Watching Arsenal under Arteta, sort of when he arrived, everyone just sort of expected this mini Pep to come in and you'd be playing, mirroring the football they try and play at City with a far weaker squad. But it seems to me like he's made them a bit more solid at one point, tried to be more attacking and exciting in others, and then sort of flipping between two things. Can you put your finger on exactly what a Michail Arteta side looks like after his time so far?
I mean, I think we're starting to see it now, and I believe that's why Moyes has done the best job out of these managers we're talking about, because you can very easily identify what David Moyes is trying to do and what his team's trying to be. I think last season under Arteta, particularly in that FA Cup run, it was about packing the defence, playing 3 at the back, being solid, using Aubameyang on the counter. And I don't think until probably maybe that Leeds game, I think that might have been the first time we actually sort of saw what this Arteta team could be going forward, with Odegaard, Saka and Smith Rowe as 3 young creative players, all sort of interchanging, very fluid, technical players playing behind a quick striker and Aubameyang. I think that for me felt like the first time where we really sort of see what Arteta's trying to do, and perhaps it's because he hasn't had the tools to do it and he's had to sort of make plans tactically to fit the players, rather than having a blank canvas sort of Pep at City style where you build the squad to fit the style. I think Arteta has had to gradually get what he wants from these players, but I think we're starting to see it more now than we have in the previous parts of his reign.
I can understand why Arsenal fans would be disappointed, because I think they're part of a band of clubs in the Premier League who will have seen this as a real opportunity missed this season, because we all knew it was going to be one of these strange seasons, and West Ham looked like the side that's going to take advantage of that. Everton could as well. And at the start of the season, should West Ham and Everton have had any greater optimism than Arsenal? You'd say probably not. The squads are no better than Arsenal's, I would say. So for them to be so far adrift, and probably, like Simon says, top 4 being out of reach, when will it be within reach if not in this weird season? Spurs the same as well. In this strange season, this was the season when, and we were saying on this podcast a while ago that it could be perfect for Mourinho, because he could be the kind of guy who'll just find his way to plot his way through. And I think that's the real problem for a lot of fans of those type of clubs, that this is just an opportunity missed. Yeah,
let's move from the dugout to the protagonist on the pitch. And James, will come back to you, and specifically Callum Hudson-Odoi, who got the Ali Dyer treatment from Thomas Tuchel this weekend, subbed on and then subbed off, and his attitude or performance criticised afterwards by the manager. Tuchel's been really, it struck me that he's been really conciliatory since he replaced Frank Lampard. He's been keen to kind of bring in all Frank Lampard's outcasts from the cold. He gave Kepa a start against Newcastle last Monday, which was quite a surprise. So this seemed like a bit of a departure of that, and they're kind of laying down the law. I mean, what was your assessment of it, and what's your assessment of how Hudson-Odoi will or has reacted to it?
Yeah, I would agree with you on how Tuchel's been since he came in, and he seems like a very intelligent guy, very sort of a emotionally aware guy as well. And he came into a club that obviously had just lost a legend, and also lost a manager who had a lot of people on side. There were a fair few, the sort of outcasts, like you say, who probably weren't in that boat, but there were a lot of young players who he gave them their chance. So he's come into a fairly awkward situation there, and it felt almost at the start that really he spent a lot of it trying to bring in those outcasts more than look after the kids that Lampard had brought through. But he did say recently, actually, he said that he's being all nice now. He's being nice to particularly us in the media, and he does come across great in his press conferences. But he did say that he's got a dark side, and he will tell people, he'll let people know if he's not happy with what they're doing. And Hudson-Odoi, the interesting thing there is that he's been one of the favourites, hasn't he? He's one who's really benefited from Tuchel's reign so far. So I don't know whether he thought he could treat him like that because he's given him the carrot so far, and maybe it was time for a bit of the stick, if you like. I think maybe it also pointed to him realising how important it was that Chelsea won that game. You know, they were on such a bad run when he came in. They've been on such a great run since he came in that you start thinking, well, you know, how high can they go? And it kind of emphasizes just how bad that run was. That one slip up, and you start thinking, now it starts looking a little bit ropey again. Now, obviously, Liverpool losing helped them a lot, but it just shows you they tried so hard to get into the top four and then immediately drop out of it, just like that when you drop a couple of points. In terms of Hudson-Odoi, he is a really switched on guy. I think he's got a great attitude in general. He responded really well to the way Lampard was treating him this season, which wasn't great. He wasn't involved much at all under Lampard. And whenever he came in or came on, he really performed well. So I would expect him to do likewise again. I probably think Tuchel probably recognises that he is the sort of person who will respond to that.
It's funny, being at the game, you didn't really expect it to happen because I don't know what other people think, but I didn't really expect Hudson-Odoi. I didn't really think Hudson-Odoi deserved it. I thought, pulled Chelsea farther up the pitch, and they looked their most threatening when he was on the pitch. But James, you spoke about how he's sort of trying to bring everyone back in from the cold and keep everyone happy. But surely it's going to be a really, really tough job to keep what is quite a bloated and expensive squad, to keep everyone sort of on side and happy. That's going to be one of his biggest challenges, isn't it?
Well, it's going to be impossible, and Lampard couldn't do it either. Lampard was desperate to get players out. He thought he had much too big a squad, and he did. There's no doubt about it. That Chelsea squad is too big, but you've got to look at the situation that Tuchel's in right now, which is he can't get rid of anyone now. This is what he's got to the end of the season, and these few months are absolutely vital to his Chelsea career, I would say, because remember, he's only got 18 months on his contract anyway. So he's really fighting to save his job from now, if you like. So he needs to get in the Champions League this year. He knows very well he needs to ideally win a trophy as well. So getting everyone on side really is absolutely vital, and so far he's done that really well. And if he can carry on doing that, then I still think it will be a very positive end to the season for Chelsea.
Simon, another player in the spotlight is Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. After the game yesterday, Jamie Redknapp saying on Sky that Aubameyang's past his best and has lost his superpower, which is quite scathing. Is that fair?
I thought that was pretty strong from Redknapp. I know obviously pundits are supposed to be opinionated and they're paid for opinions, but it felt for me a bit harsh given, a week ago we were seeing his praises after the Leeds game and how he was looking back to his best. For me, I think it was a strange one, maybe playing Aubameyang against Man City. It doesn't really feel like the sort of game that would suit him. I think against Leeds and Benfica, there was so much space in behind their two defences that Aubameyang, it was made for him in those sort of games. Whereas against City, he was very much feeding off scraps, and a lot of the tasks he was being asked to do was sort of hold the ball up with his back to goal, and it's not really what he's good at.
It's interesting you say that, because at the start of the season, right, there would have been no doubt that Aubameyang played every game, as far as I could tell. So the fact that you're even questioning whether he was right for a specific game, I think it says a lot about how his position's changed at Arsenal this season.
Yeah, and I think you could argue you'd play him against City, but you'd play him left and have someone like Lacazette who's going to hold the ball up and do that task against a team where you're going to be very limited and you need a bit of an outlet. But I think also with the fixtures they've been, playing 90 minutes against Leeds, then playing Benfica, and he's going to play Benfica again in Athens. For me, I wouldn't really have been playing him in that Man City game, partly because you want him fresh for that second leg, which is season defining. But I think this notion that he's past his best and written off just 7 days after he scored a hat-trick and looks brilliant, for me feels a bit much. I still think he's got plenty to offer, and whether it's more about managing his minutes going forward, perhaps that's the case, but I don't think you can suddenly write him off as someone who's not a valuable asset for Arsenal.
Speaking of making outrageous out there comments, I think it's going to be the decision to give him a new contract. I just think it's going to be one that Arsenal are really going to regret for a long time. And I think it's something that as a club, they've got to start looking at that. And of course, you've got the situation with Lacazette happening, and very similar as well. Obviously, it happened with Ozil. If you're a club that's getting people in at the sort of age that certainly Lacazette and Aubameyang were, then I think it's going to take some brave and bold leadership to say when they get to a point that we sell them. Because when you've got aging guys on long contracts, this is always going to be a risk. Now, obviously, in general, they've been great signings, haven't they? But when you get to that next point, when it's their last big contract, it's just fraught with danger. And I think that's what they're seeing now with Aubameyang. Is he going to get any better? I don't know. I know we're in an age when players are going on longer and longer and longer, but I don't put Aubameyang in the Ronaldo, Ibrahimovic category personally. So I think someone needed to be brave. I know it was really difficult last summer because you've mentioned it before on this show. If they'd have lost him, it would have been a really bad look. But if you're a proactive club and you say no, we're going to sell him and we're going to bring in someone else who's younger, who's going to give us more years because that's our ethos, that's where we go, then I think the fans buy into it if they know that's what it is. Now you're stuck with a guy who he's been shocking this season, hasn't he? And it's a negative vibe over the club and one that's going to hang over them for the remainder of his contract if he's there that long.
We're talking of big contracts and fading, aging forwards. Brings me nicely onto Gareth Bale. Although perhaps that's harsh because I think he was the one big positive from Spurs at West Ham yesterday. Came off the bench at half-time and changed the game and very nearly dragged Spurs to a point or even a win. He hit the crossbar. He set up Lucas Moura's consolation goal in the end and was also at the heart of a very good move where Kane should probably have set up Son or Dele, but Declan Rice made a really great saving tackle. So I think if Spurs can take anything from that game, it was Bale's performance. He finally looked like the player I think most realistic fans expected him to be when he came back or hoped he could be. I don't think anyone was really expecting him to kind of mic on anyone in the Premier League, but they were expecting those kind of deft touches, those intelligent taking up of positions, the set pieces, the through balls. And there was a glimpse of all of that yesterday and, of course, on Thursday night against Wolfsburger when he scored a great goal. So I think Mourinho has been very reluctant to play Bale, but if there's a turning point for him, it's been in the last few days. And obviously the hope now is that he can play a much bigger part in the second half of the season. Jack, did you have any thoughts on Bale?
What's just sort of question for you really in terms of what's really changed for Dele and for Bale, because they've been so written off, so cast aside, and then very quickly Jose has sort of swiveled on both of them and said that he's going to need them and bring them back in. Do you think that was always his plan, or do you think things got so desperate for Spurs that he thought I may as well turn to them and see what they can do, and they've started to take those chances?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, I think with Dele, you could see Mourinho's rhetoric very clearly changed after the end of the January transfer window. He had a clear the air talk with Dele, which suggests that the fact that he stayed at the club, made Mourinho realise that he was going to have to use him and get the best out of him in kind of the same way he did with Ndombele after the summer. With Bale, it's really been a fitness thing. I think Bale's looked like a guy that hasn't trusted his body, and Mourinho is just not someone who's going to put you in the team unless you're going to run through brick walls for him. That's well established over the course of his career. But I think he is now at a point, as you said, where he can't really afford to keep ignoring those players. I mean, they're obviously better footballers than Lucas and Lamela. They're obviously going to bring more to the team if they're fit and motivated. And certainly in the case of Bale, it looks like he has slowly turned a corner fitness-wise, and he looks like someone who kind of wants to be involved. And he certainly got the Euros in mind with Wales as something to kind of work towards and recover his fitness and form for. At the end, through some questions. Simon, starting with Arsenal. Ozguna49 on Twitter asks, should we be scared that Saka gets poached by a bigger club with more money than Arsenal?
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted this during the game yesterday about, if Pep was watching that, he'd have thought Saka would look quite nice in that Man City team. And I got politely told where to go by most of the Arsenal fans on Twitter. But I think right now, I don't think it's a problem that Arsenal should be worried about. Saka's on a long-term contract. He's at a club which he's come through. He obviously has a close affiliation to. He's playing week in, week out. He's very close with Arteta. So right now it's not something to worry about. But if, 2-3 years time, we're still talking about Arsenal being a team that's trying to get in the top four, that's trying to win trophies, then I think it would be a situation, because Saka, for me, is looking like a Champions League player, and it's only too long, 2-3 years time, he's going to want to be playing in a competition like that.
I've had lots of questions on Twitter about Spurs' defensive problems. Several people querying why Toby Alderweireld isn't playing more regularly in the Premier League and why Joe Rodon hasn't been giving it a chance. I think it does surprise me, and I wrote yesterday in my analysis on the whistle at West Ham that Rodon and Alderweireld should really be the defensive pairing going forward in the biggest games. I think Alderweireld's got the experience, and Rodon was the best defender in the Championship last season and has shown promise, so deserves a chance. I think the reason Mourinho's not picking them is because Alderweireld's minutes are being managed carefully. He's had fitness problems and he can't play 3 or 4 times in 10 days like perhaps Dyer and Sanchez can. Whereas I think Rodon is just considered inexperienced, and as we know, Mourinho doesn't tend to kind of trust young players and throw them in quickly at the deep end if he doesn't think they're a really special talent. So a frustration given the ongoing mistakes of Dyer and Sanchez, but it's almost getting to the point where he has to make another change there and perhaps give Rodon or Japhet Tanganga a go in the middle. And finally, a question from Harry, a West Ham fan for you, Jack. How important has Jesse Lingard been to the Hammers' recent run of form, and what are the chances of him permanently signing in the summer?
If he keeps going like this, I think it's going to be very difficult to get him in the summer. James might be able to tell us a bit more about United's side in a moment, but he's brought so much in such a few games. He's brought a lot of energy. Moyes was praising him the other day for just the personality he's brought and making the training ground an even more enjoyable place to be for the squad, which is crucial when they can't really go anywhere else at the moment, can they? And he's brought. I spoke to Ben Johnson after the game on Monday last week, and he sort of said he just calms the anxiety for everyone on the pitch because he's got the confidence to pick up the ball in any sort of pocket of space, no matter how many players are around him. And he'll do something with it as well. He's got the sort of the vision and the creativity to just calm the nerves and take the pressure off a little bit. So he's brought so much, and then he's brought, of course, that quality that we've seen in the final third as well. But again, in terms of keeping him, James might be able to lay out United's side. West Ham would certainly like to do it. It's just how much they want, really.
I'd say West Ham's biggest problem is that he's really putting himself in the shop window. I don't think he'll go back to United, despite Solskjaer saying that he'd like him to come back. Solskjaer says these things often. He said likewise about Alexis Sanchez, Chris Smalling, the list goes on with that. There isn't a place for him at United, that's the thing. His quality's never been in doubt, but things kind of turned a bit toxic for him there. Not only, well, so he couldn't get on into the team, but also even with fans, he was a figure that people could just really chose to focus their anger towards, unfairly so, I'd say. West Ham, you've seen the quality that he's got, but the danger that they've got is that he is doing so well that there will be plenty of Premier League clubs interested, plenty of foreign clubs as well. I would say though, if Moyes gets them into the Champions League, then why not? Why can't he stay?
Yeah, and if Lingard continues this kind of form, you wonder if he's putting himself in England consideration as well, albeit there's so many good players in that position. That's all we've got time for this week. We'll be back next Monday to discuss next weekend's football. But thanks to Simon, Jack and James, and thanks for watching.